sabihin na there was a moment of realization.
You learn to fail a lot.
Of course, it's never a good feeling to finish a match like that. I hope everything's okay with her because, it was a really tough battle.
A shameful act of humiliation came after a stunning victory and what ought to have been recalled as a night of unadulterated athletic glory instead turned into the first section of one of the biggest explosive disputes in contemporary tennis. Has observed. A youthful champion was erect. Once history has been rewritten. However, strong figures attempted to minimize her accomplishment, with words brimming with conceit and disdain. What transpired next revealed severe gaps in class, sportsmanship, and respect, and demonstrated how achievement from the incorrect location can still ensure folks who are extremely uneasy. This narrative is more than simply tennis. It concerns authority, arrogance, and a reluctance to be quieted. December of 2026. Bangkok, Thailand. The 33rd Southeast. The Asian Games were almost at their peak of emotion within the national. The Tennis Development Center is a location brimming with heat, loudness, and anticipation. Every seat was filled with fans. The air was humid and the flags swung furiously. Felt burdened by fate. This was never intended to be just one more final. This was a moment that took years to create, a conflict between home advantage and insatiable appetite. The star of the host nation, borne the burden of patriotism, as a 20-year-old stood across the net. Filipina, who was already proficient in endure ruthless, angry crowds, obligations, as well as the harsh grind of the tour abroad. On one side stood the adored Mananka Sweeney of Thailand. Hope, competing not just for money but also for affirmation in front of her own people. Alexandra Eala was on the opposite side. Despite being young, experience has toughened them. Trained with unrelenting discipline among aristocratic Europeans and honed by months of intense rivalry. She was not meant to rule over foreign soil. She wasn't meant to be silent. The throng. She wasn't meant to terminate a drought that plagued the Philippines. Tennis for ladies for more than 2 decades. However, that's just what she arrived to perform. After 26 arduous years, Filipino, a women's singles has been anticipated by fans. Gold in the SEA Games. Generations have heard tales of near heartbreaks and misses. That lack of presence has become a shadow that looms over the sport. A reminder of the challenges faced by athletes from underfunded systems to break through. The pressure didn't crush on Eala. It made her more focused. From the initial game, her goal was indisputable. She made deliberate movements, hit the ball neatly and declined to allow her opponent to breathe. It wasn't an equal competition. It was a methodical disassembly. Eala's rallies were dictated by the forehand. Her backhand took in pressure and gave it back with interest, and her poise never cracked. The scoreboard displayed a vicious tale, 6:1, 6:2, a conclusion so biased that it made the home crowd uncomfortable. Quiet. This was not a coincidence. This was opportunity for a preparation meeting. Each and every the winner seemed to make a statement. Each hold act as a proclamation that history was not waiting anymore. It was here. When the last point was gained, incredulity shook the stands. Filipino supporters erupted. Tears came. Telephones ascended into the air to record evidence of a moment that would last forever. The national anthem was played. Gold was positioned around Eala's throat, and for a moment, ideal frame of time, the narrative felt finished. She had been carried by a young woman, fulfilled the aspirations of the country. It ought to have concluded there. However, rather than respect and acclaim, something far uglier came next. As festivities continuing, rumors of a remark appeared, purportedly created by a senior Thai tennis player. Official words that pierce the happiness. A statement so contemptuous like a blade, and loaded that it changed in an instant. An international sporting upset. Controversy. The statement ascribed to Thailand's tennis president. Federation viewed the victory as only a triumph by a young person from a developing nation. The region was rocked by such statements. 11 words were sufficient to exclude any illusion of a tactful loss, making a call to triumph just a win that cut down on years of sacrifice into something little, as though rewriting the past was merely a footnote. Speaking of Eala as a child, denigrated her expertise, her discipline, her accomplishments, and declaring her native country to be impoverished, crossed a line unrelated to athletics, and all things related to classism and conceit. It wasn't a subtle insult. It's conveyed the idea that success from some nations is less valid, that greatness ought to occur with a specific passport, spending limit, or background. It implied that the loss didn't result from being outplayed, but from an annoying irregularity. It was. The language of entitlement is having trouble to deal with losing. For millions of. For Filipinos, it was intimate. There was an instant and severe backlash. Anger and pride erupted on social media. In the same proportion, supportive messages inundated all of the platforms. Sportsmen, politicians, artists, and regular fans spoke in a single voice. This was no longer around one game of tennis. It was concerning dignity. It has to do with not allowing anyone who minimizes an accomplishment via tireless labor. The indignation spread outside of Southeast Asia as fans from other countries acknowledged the comment for what it was. A bitter loser. Try to cover up embarrassment with condescension. Why was the insult even? The match's context was more harsh itself. Those who kept a close eye knew that Eala had not received a simple rout. During the last, dubious eyebrows were raised by calls. Shots that appeared to be out and were summoned. Rules applied to balls that kissed the line. Out. There were frequent disruptions to momentum. The chair umpire was not too urgent in reversing judgments that favored the player at home. I sensed it. Her annoyance was apparent. She went over to the umpire. Her looks were a mixture of incredulity and resolve. Athletes are aware of this sensation of powerlessness when the system appears slanted against you, when just effort might not be sufficient. Less skilled players disintegrate during those times. Champions adjust. Rather than disintegrating, Eala improved her performance. She dispelled uncertainty by striking more forcefully, going deeper, and aiming in the direction of the lines. If the calls could not be relied upon, she would not leave any space for interpretation. The winners took off over her opponent. She was the target of rallies. Terms. The harsh surroundings, the boisterous crowd, the biased officiating. willing her to fail. Everything turned into fuel. When the final score was, the message was unmistakable, sealed. Even with all the barriers set against, she had ruled over her. No official, no throng, no disparaging comment could. What was verified by the scoreboard? This was superiority rather than situation. Within the following, many anticipated an emotional reaction, a declaration of rage, a request for an apology. Rather, Eala decided to self-control. She refrained from snapping. She did not engage in insults. She allowed quiet, and success speaks louder than indignation could ever do so. Her poise enhanced the conflict between resentment and dignity. There was grace and gold on one side and had justifications. That limitation only increased public admiration for her. At the age of 20, she demonstrated maturity that shone the insignificance of those who attempted to denigrate her. She grew more. Compared to a champion, she came to represent athletes worldwide who are informed that they are lower due to their origin. However, when the storm surrounding the final of the Maritime Games started to settle, a much more sinister dispute loomed on the horizon. One that would draw someone into a fight that goes well beyond baseline rallies and lines of score. A scandal that would reveal unpleasant realities of power, sponsorship, as well as how young women athletes receive treatment when the cameras are meant to be amicable. What would tremble after that? Not simply tennis, but the business sector encircling it. As public rage over the degrading comment started to cool, as many people thought the disagreement had reached its natural. In conclusion, a brand new storm erupted, one much more unsettling and distant, more insightful about the concealed young female athletes' realities are compelled to navigate. The second scandal did not originate from a tennis court or a press conference, but behind closed doors. Doors within the shiny, opulent world of corporate sponsorship and elite hospitality, an area where wealth, power, and quiet frequently clash. Expert tennis is no longer limited to games and awards. It's a commercial, branding-driven machine. Endorsements as well as image control. The top attendance at events is expected of players. Pose for pictures and serve as a sponsors with perfect smiles in spite of their emotions. These responsibilities are presented as privileges, but they frequently athletes, particularly female athletes, in extremely precarious situations. Several reports state that appeared quickly and spread like wildfire. Alexandra Eala went to what was characterized as an obligatory promotional role associated with Emirates, the worldwide airline recognized for its profound connections to global sports. On paper, it was a standard look, an upscale meeting with VIPs and executives, visitors, cameras, champagne, and practiced greetings. Nothing to do with the invitation implied peril. Nothing about the scene alluded to scandal. However, the night would turn into one of the pivotal moments of Eala's youth career, not due to a racket or a scoreboard, but due to a choice to refuse to remain silent. Witnesses explained how Eala was invited to participate in a group photo meeting with a number of male visitors, males wearing fitted suits and seeming to possess executive roles or finance power in the